Real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to share a new service called Getita that Ken and I have been using that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?
There's a fine line between going all in and having a manufacturer get you the lowest cost, thinking you're going to sell it, as opposed to testing it with a small amount, even if you have higher cost of goods, just to prove that there can be traction, that there's going to be interest in the product, that the product's going to convert. So back then, though, it was easier to launch products. You could do reviews in exchange for free product, and a lot of that changed over the years pretty quickly. So it was a matter of just continuing to stay behind really the path to scale, and knowing your market share knows how much, provides a quantified data point that gives you an idea on how much opportunity there really is. Figuring out the right time is tough, but I think ultimately if you're building to sell, you should be doing the key things all the way through and staying true to that. So, for us, it was, we knew we were going to sell, but we gave ourselves a 5-year runway to build it. And then probably by year 3.5, year 4, it took us 5-6 years to sell, but I guess I'm thinking through the timeline of us going back 2 years ago to get our books in order. We knew that we could sell on a moment's notice if the market was hot. There's over 100 now. So how do you know who's credible and capable? Well, ask them if they've done any deals. Ask them how many deals they've done. Let's spend time talking to some of the brands that they've bought, right? They should have no problem giving you a reference. And you want to know, did the first earnout come? Did the person that you're talking to earn his earnout? Or did they have to split hairs over it? And so a lot of these questions are really good because hindsight's 2020. Well, if they've never done a deal, there is no hindsight.
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's show, we are joined by Josh Dittrich. Josh is a visionary entrepreneur, seller, investor, advisor, husband, and father of 5. Most recently, he built and sold 2 e-commerce businesses for 8 figures and was recently featured in a Business Insider article about how he did it. This has inspired him to write the book, Aggregator Navigator, the ultimate guide to maximizing the exit of your Amazon brand to demystify the selling process of selling to an aggregator. He's also the founder of brandedseller.com, helping Amazon sellers strategize and maximize their exit. Brandedseller.com also provides stunning low-cost video and listing content. Welcome to the show, Josh. How are you doing?
Good, guys. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So first things first, let's dive into your path as an entrepreneur, and we can go as far back as you would like on this question.
Well, there's, the old stories of lemonade stands and mowing lawns and shoveling snow. And, that's just whatever you can do to find cash, I guess, under the couch cushions, some of those things probably aren't as exciting, but that was like, ages 7, 8, 9. But to be honest, I've been working forever. Like at the age of 14, I just wanted to hustle. So I think the real entrepreneurship itch came from this whole e-com thing and in my late, probably mid 20s, where I just had this matter of when, not if, I wanted to leave corporate. And it was a matter of just trying things online. And I don't know if you guys ever tried Amway, but Amway gave me a flavor of like the idea around, earning potential and earning passive income and making money while you're sleeping. And so Amazon, eBay, e-commerce made sense to me after Amway failed to try to just sell things and flip things. So yeah, a few failed ventures, buying rings, direct import from China, tungsten rings. I was getting married at the time, and $300 ring at the jewelry store that I could buy for $4. I was like, hey, this could be good. this much inventory made up about $100,000 in sales. I'm like, hey, I don't even need a warehouse. So it just, next thing you knew, there were only $20 rings on Amazon and there's no competition. Yeah, it was all competition, no opportunity for me. I tried listing jerseys. I imported jerseys with Brett Favre, Viking, the former Packer, now a Viking fan. And I was walking around the Metrodome area trying to sell those jerseys to the tailgaters. And, these are just the scrappy ones. More recently, before that, before I actually went to full-time entrepreneurship, was a side hustle gig, was selling to my potential new employer. I was selling water filters while I was at Best Buy. And so this client of mine, he was a customer. He had all these other water filters so I was selling to him a couple of different products. And he's like, well, I have this entire warehouse full of other filters. Maybe you could sell those for me. So I was a side hustle, 1099 sales guy. And, all these little flavors were just add-ons to what I already knew how to do. But, just dabbling until it really made sense. And I got to learn by working for someone else and failing and probably sometimes losing money, on someone else's dime before I figured out how to make it make sense for myself. But yeah, always looking for opportunities as a kid. And whether it was in my mid-20s or my teen years, it was about working hard and figuring out the next hack,
Very cool. So Josh, the title of this podcast is Firing the Man. And so you've kind of went from, in the early years from that, and you mentioned you worked for corporate for a long time, and then you kind of, hit your sweet spot in e-commerce, and now you're working full time as an entrepreneur. Before you hit that, what fears did you have about, leaving your corporate job for working for yourself full time, and how did you overcome those fears?
Well, I think it's a lot easier when you get excited about starting something and wanting to leave, and you get real excited about when you see income coming in. You don't really quantify if it's going to be enough to pay the bills, right? So you're always balancing as stuff kicks in. You're like, oh, something's working. Let's just quit. Let's just go, And I felt like that was pretty hard, a pretty big risk to take, just cutting things off like that, because I had a family, probably at the time, 3 kids. My wife wasn't working. She was a stay-at-home mom. So clearly the fear of not being able to provide. And my dad, scraped by as an entrepreneur, but he was mainly a solopreneur. So he created himself a job, which means if the phone didn't ring, he couldn't provide. If, the week was slow or the month was slow, the household income was slow, right? So those are those natural things that were kind of weighing on me. And risk of failure, I don't think was a big concern, just because we already produced a almost 7-figure business before I left full time. After 6 months probably of our product growing and putting money in the bank, we got to a monthly rate that replaced my income by 2 to 3 times. And there was a bunch of cash in the bank because we hadn't taken it out. So that was the strategy against that fear, being able to be comfortable and replace my income prior to leaving. But the biggest fear of all was like just telling the boss I'm done, and it was like trying to think through what that should look like perfectly. But it ended up being a couple of times, I'm done, I'm going to leave. And then maybe it's not time. But when I finally said it, it actually was a 6-month process to leave because of how involved I was in the leadership team of the business we were in. It was an e-com business. But it was great because that was an extra 6 months of buffer, right, to continue to build that reserve stack. So, I think the 2 big ones were just providing. But the second one was like, how am I going to tell this guy that took a chance on me 7.5 years ago, who knew I was going to leave, but I was going to leave without him. So, he anticipated building a business with me. That's the ironic part. My employer said, I'm in. When you're ready to go, let's go. And he didn't know that I built this thing on the side. And so me leaving, it was tough. He had seen us building other ventures together. And so, yeah, that was it was tough. But we got through it and put together a plan to exit and a transition plan that made sense. And, all these things, hindsight's 2020, are usually not as bad as we make them be at the time, right? But yeah, that's it.
I like how you shared that path specifically about the income piece of it, because that's something that I think a lot of people, they want to start a new venture and they think, oh, I'm going to quit my job now and go and start that venture. And it seems like people will often find that they're strapped for cash and and that full-time job is producing good income. And it just takes some hustle after hours, as you know. So let's dive into the Amazon business that you grew all the way to your first 8-figure exit. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what helped you get to that incredible exit point?
Yeah, it was probably March 2016 where I launched our first private label product. The idea was, I had this company I was at previously. We were one of the first to start private labeling in a category that water filters, it seemed like a ton of potential. We had a bunch of SKUs selling other people's brands. We were one of the first. We had all this website traffic, coming to our site, and we had a really good opportunity to learn how to identify products that we want to move from a brand that we sold to a private label. What was the strategy there? So along the way, and also identifying new markets to go into by quantifying the size, we learned all these things in a category I was already familiar with. And that kind of started giving me the confidence that if I applied the same strategy in identifying products and researching and launching the right product in any category, I could do that. It didn't just have to be in this water filter and air filter category. So I knew I needed a brand that would be, over all encompassing, that would allow me to go after home and kitchen or tools and home improvement or sports or outdoors. And so we came up with essential values, and my first product sort of came to me on my ride home. I had this idea. I had a Keurig coffee machine. If you have one of those, it requires it to be descaled. So the hard water minerals that build up in the water and the city water that we have make your machine more difficult to heat up over time. So you have to descale it to get the hardness off. And, Keurig had a descaler, a 14-ounce product. It was a one-use descaler. It was like $12.99. And I'm like, man, this is just liquid. Maybe we make it more concentrated. We make it a smaller size and we make it less money. And so we did an 8-ounce. It weighed, quite a bit less. So we were able to hit the lower tier down on the FBA fees and kind of reverse engineer a concentrate that would allow 2 uses in one. So we marked it as a 2-in-1 solution for $10.99 instead of $12.99. So the idea of essential values, the brand was born that we could take a product that added value in any category, utilize that brand and be a lower cost alternative. Similar to the way Target Up and Up would sit next to Advil on the Target shelf, or same with Walmart, great value next to Advil on the Walmart shelf. So that was our strategy, but that was side hustle for a year and a half, full time in 2017, and went from just a handful of products I started on the side hustle to over 170 ASINs. And about 2 years in, I hired my brother. He helped us launch a new product after going to a Prosper show a number of years ago. He's like, this Amazon thing's cool. How do I get started? So we engaged with him, and I was like, dude, you got to leave your corporate job. He's like, let me see if we can figure this thing out. So he started producing products for us. We were paying him a commission, and it got to a point where he needed to, it really made sense for him to consider leaving and coming on full time. And so then we went from like 30 products to the 170 over the next 3.5, 4 years until this last March we sold. And so our 12-month trailing revenue was 10.3 million when we sold. And so, building a brand from 0 to 10 million in 4 or 5 years, it's a ride, it's a journey. And the most exciting part clearly was exiting and seeing that. But for us, it was unique because we were able to keep a lot of our team on and have a contract. But it started out as this idea: when am I going to leave? What am I going to do? I think I know what I'm going to do. Let's find a brand that's going to work. But amazing journey. And I just never imagined that I would be able to have a job or a new venture that would give me time and money, and then eventually build an asset and sell it was as mind blowing as we were tracking multiples. We saw the market really trending up, and we knew it was time this last year with aggregators flooding the space. So quite the ride for sure.
Yeah, Josh, to dig into that a little bit, there was a lot there. One thing I'd like to point out is David and I talk about this on the show a lot, is where an entrepreneur will use their previous work experience from corporate and kind of translate that into their entrepreneurial journey. And it sounds like you had some experience in that space, and then you kind of said, oh, well, I can make this better or do this different. And I really like to see that, like, transitioning over. So that's really cool to see. A lot of people listening to the show are, either they haven't started on Amazon, or maybe they're at 100K, So can you describe your journey and maybe give a couple of tips on how you went from 0 to 100K and 1 million to 10 million? And what was the steps in there, the strategy with that?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was, really a matter of finding the right product. And that's always the hardest part. And you think, the right product is the one that gets you excited and the one that checks all the boxes. And we didn't have all the tools back then. And the market size was easy to sort of assume because there was one or two guys selling a product like this, using the Jungle Scout tool to kind of quantify what that might be. So when I realized it was a $500,000 a month or whatever it was at the time market with no competition, I'm like, this is my only product. This has got to work. Let's go. And so that first product took off. We sold 70 in the first, probably a couple of days. And then we built the next batch of I think 140. And then we built the next batch of several hundred. And so in the beginning, it was like, we didn't have a manufacturer. I sourced the liquid. I created the bottles, put the labels on myself, right? So all this in the beginning was all about how can we test something? How can we test something quick? And, before going to get a manufacturer and having all the specifications and get an SDS sheet, like it was like, does this even work, right? So I think in the beginning, it's important to realize success doesn't happen overnight and you need to continue to work on it. But once you figure out a system and a process that works, you have to double down on that, right? So painting a picture for the audience and for myself at the time was, what are the criteria where most competitors are not in? And we were all about selling items $13 and less because many people didn't want to go at them. They thought there was no money in it. But, I think often when you do the math, if you can put $1 into a product and make $3 profit after advertising, that's a 300% cash on cash return. Like, even though you're making only $3 margin, but your cost of goods are $1. So don't be afraid, to look at the math, but you got to leave room for ACOS. So in the beginning, we kind of stuck to this model where certain number of competitors, we were okay with niches, but it had to be at least 50K in market size. So I think going in, the first tip is, what is the value prop? And, what is the strategy around the products? And some of these things are just like, oh, that looks good. Let's throw a label on it and go. But be diligent with that process, identify the criteria, and then stay in that sweet spot. And so for us, as we went from 1 to 2 to 3, it's like, okay, this is working. This is great. Figuring out advertising wasn't very hard. Built our listings right with research in the beginning, great images, great content, doing the basics. And the basics only go so far. But when we really decided to double down on new product development, that's when everything took off, right? So for example, going from 1 to 10 products in a half a year isn't too hard, but it does take work. But if you want to go from, 10 products to 30 products in maybe a year, you're going to triple your output, right? Well, that takes a lot of cash. So we were looking for ways to test things quickly and easily with doing our own labeling, with doing our own kitting sometimes, the simplest way possible, instead of having to source, a finished good and buy 5,000 pieces right away, right? So there's a fine line between going all in and having a manufacturer get you the lowest cost, thinking you're going to sell it, as opposed to testing it with a small amount, even if you have higher cost of goods, just to prove that there can be traction, that there's going to be interest in the product, that the product's going to convert. So back then, though, it was easier to launch products. You could do reviews in exchange for free product, and a lot of that changed over the years pretty quickly. So it was a matter of just continuing to stay behind really the path to scale, and knowing your market share knows how much, provides a quantified data point that gives you an idea on how much opportunity there really is. So a couple of nuggets there, I think, for sure.
Definitely. You talked about sourcing products and launching then versus now. And I think you're kind of getting to the more competitive landscape that we're operating in. Now, obviously, I take it you've exited and jumped right back into e-commerce. Is that correct?
Yeah, we launched a second brand sort of in parallel to the closing process. So, plan to do it right again. And yeah, exactly. We're 30 products into our new brand already after 6 months.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, in terms of, forming criteria in this new age of competition on Amazon, what are some characteristics of products that you're looking for And where do you see opportunities in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely exciting to get captivated by a market that's doing millions of dollars a month, right? But it's also very, very intimidating to see, 30 results on the first page of Amazon with nothing less than, 2,000 or 3,000 product reviews, right? So you're absolutely right that the landscape has changed. I think it's important to really know to match up the category you're going into with your skill set and confidence to compete, right? So what does that mean? Well, if you're going into a really, really heavy category, you need to be confident, though, that the tactics that you use, the product category, the differentiation, the pricing strategy, all these things, just by launching a great product doesn't put you in the top spot, as you know. And so there has to be a level of the product's going to be great, the listing's going to be great, but then there's this unknown is how long before I'm going to make any money. And so making money today, launching a new product is very hard, and it's all about the ad spend, So for us to launch a product profitably like we did 4 or 5 years ago and make money from day one, many times it's the second or third reorder before we start to see positive profitability because of the ad spend piece, right? And we're trading off ranking organically for advertising sales in the beginning. So yeah, I mean, that journey and that criteria is knowing where you can compete. So in some cases, many guys say, I only want to go in with X number of competitors. Well, for us, it could be 30 competitors, but we rank each of those competitors in terms of their listing quality. And so that starts to build a portfolio of, attributes about the category that we know we can disrupt, right? Based on our strategy and having better images, having a better brand, having better titles, and just knowing that we can get to that 50, 60, 70, 80% conversion rate. So, for us, we've kind of stuck to liquids. We have a process in place. Liquids are difficult because they require a safety data sheet. We have all the liquids formulated for us. So there's a little bit of science and chemistry there. And that's harder, right? So barriers of entry is one key piece. If you're going to go launch a product when there's 20 guys that has the same image that you can find on Alibaba, like what's your differentiator? What's your unique value proposition that's going to make your listing stand out? So for us, we didn't see a lot of competitors. We knew that we could make it a 12 ounce instead of an 8 ounce, or 8 ounce concentrate instead of a 14 ounce, or do a 2-pack or a 3-pack because we had kitting capabilities in house. But the nugget here, man, is understanding if we're going to sell an 8 ounce coffee solution or a 14 ounce coffee solution, but then there's people that have a 32 ounce or a 2-pack or a 6-pack, folks don't necessarily know which product to launch. And so all those keywords are relevant for that product page, for that search results, but you need to figure out where's the 80% of the revenue going. Is it in the 14 ounce or is it in the single 8 ounce? And really planning for where am I going to position the product to best disrupt those listings? And is it going to go head to head with the big guy? Is it going to be more volume at a less price and more of a concentrate play, right? So that's an example, but staying in the niche and having a clear path has been helpful along the way, instead of having, I'm going to try this mold over here. I'm going to take a bet on this supplier. Like, if you got a good supplier in house, find more SKUs with that current supplier that you can do to make your costs on shipping cheaper, right? And so you can do a lot of little things along the way to keep you honed in on that process and staying true to it to see the success happen. I think today, if you're just launching an Amazon business, though, it's harder than it's ever been to launch a product and say, how am I going to do anything in this space? You got to stay confident, you got to stay patient, but have some cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree. As Amazon matures and as more competition comes in, it's, a lot of those nuggets that you just dropped, Josh, are they're gold mine, stay in the same niche and, look for opportunities within suppliers, lots of good nuggets there. I'd like to pivot a little bit, and you're fresh off an exit. I'd like to pivot into that a little bit and talk about exiting. This is a 2-part question. Someone has an Amazon business. When should they sell? And if it is the right time to sell, what are some things they can do to kind of prep for that?
Yeah. I mean, if someone's going in starting an Amazon brand, the first question is, what's their real motivation? In the beginning, it's probably to fire the man, right? You have freedom, potentially make some more money, but you have to realize what you're building is an asset that has value, right? So from the beginning, if your goal is profitability, stay true to that, because your profitability percentage is a very strong indicator of your margins and competency as an operator if you're planning to sell. But frankly, you can't do anything if you don't have margin. So rather than growing for the sake of growing, continue to focus on growing profitably. But the high level here, guys, is you want to see at least 2 years of history, in a brand. So those that have started a brand, grown the brand, maintained the brand, fought through COVID, stayed in stock, right? If you're thinking of selling, but the last 6 months you've been out of stock, like that's probably not necessarily a good time to sell, because your financial reflection in the last 12 months are only, 6 months of actuals that really make sense. So you have to think through, there's never going to be a perfect scenario where you can time the business or the market for a sale perfectly. But if your business is growing, if it continues to grow healthily, if your concentration of sales are primarily Amazon, US, FBA, if your percentages of margin are net would be 15 plus, some basic things to work on are just making sure your books are in line. And what I mean by that is we started 2 years prior. We knew our books were sloppy in the beginning when we first started. We were just coding deposits in there. We weren't doing gross to net, right? So if Amazon paid us $100, we coded $100 as sales instead of 200 minus commissions, minus FBA fees. So taking your accounting seriously, right? Making sure if someone were to open your P&L, it looks like a real business. It's not just in a spreadsheet or, a Helium 10 profits report that you dumped out. You want to run a professional business. So that means also moving in as quickly as you can into accrual-based accounting as opposed to cash basis. Cash basis throws off your profit, because as you make purchases on inventory, you're expensing that right away, as opposed to putting that inventory value on your balance sheet. So those are mistakes I made early on. Like, okay, we got this thing going, let's just sell. If I write a PO, that's going to go to cost of goods. If I sell something, that's going to go to income. Making sure you're in accrual is going to save a lot of effort down the road, having to go back and undo that if you decide to sell and you've been 6 or 8 months going the other direction. It's a lot of work to go back and undo that. So those are a couple of things, kind of quickly, but also having in your mind a buffer or an idea of when you want to sell. So if your goal is to build a $10 million business, you're going to have challenges and it's going to be work along the way, and that's fine. But is there a chance you might need to sell or want to sell early? Sure. You don't need to hit 10 million necessarily, but you need to identify, if you do the math, what does that exit look like, especially after the taxes, right? So just for example, let's say you sell a brand for 7 figures. You have $1 million exit. Okay. That's awesome. But are you going to retire on that? And you might, if it's $1 million liquid and you have a good place to park that cash and you don't have a very expensive lifestyle. But timing is also that $1 million exit after taxes is, probably less than 700,000, and you no longer have a monthly income. So, can you recreate your income with that 700 grand by investing it? I don't know. It'd be pretty tough, if you're making hundreds of thousands a year. So figuring out the right time is tough, but I think ultimately if you're building to sell, you should be doing the key things all the way through and staying true to that. So, for us, it was, we knew we were going to sell, but we gave ourselves a 5-year runway to build it. And then probably by year 3.5, year 4, it took us 5-6 years to sell, but I guess I'm thinking through the timeline of us going back 2 years ago to get our books in order. We knew that we could sell on a moment's notice if the market was hot. And so we took advantage of that in 21 when the multiples were going up, being able to get multiple offers because of all these aggregators to the table. So, for us, we were ready to sell, not because we had been putting it on the market and trying to sell for the last year, but because we had done the prep work ahead of time so we could produce the financials that they needed.
Sorry to interrupt the episode. You may have heard Ken and I talking recently about a new tool that we're using for Amazon refunds. Now, I have used other refund tools like this. However, I can tell you in the first 7 days, they scrubbed the back end of my Amazon account going back 18 months and found $5,000 of refunds. And the nice thing about this is it's my money. Amazon made a mistake and they are just auditing my account. The other thing I really like about this tool is there is no monthly fee. They only charge a commission if they are successful in getting you your money. Go to Getida.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM for Firing the Man, FTM400. This is an awesome tool. Can't say enough good things about it. Now, back to the episode. Very nice, very nice. Now, keeping along with that example of the person that's getting ready to sell, you had mentioned a lot of prep steps that you had taken in advance of exit. But when someone's deciding, do I go with a broker? Do I not go with a broker? What are some things that they should be weighing? And, in the end, what would you recommend?
Yeah, it's a fair question, because most folks that are listening, doesn't matter the size of your brand, the aggregators are out there and they're letting you know that they're wanting to buy your business, right? And you could have a couple of products and, you could have a couple thousand products. It doesn't matter. Aggregators are knocking on doors. And so the question ultimately is, when you go to sell a business, you have two aspects of it. One is, am I going to be able to find the right buyer for my business to maximize the exit? Is it going to be a strategic, or is it just someone that's going to want to operate, right? Most of the space, the professional buyer world, is aggregators. So I say that because broker is a great strategy if it's a mystery on who the buyer might be, or you want to turn over a lot of rocks to figure out who those buyers might be, right? So the day and age we live in now is all the aggregators that are out there, you can find the size that they are. You can find how many employees they are. You can find a whole list of them just by doing some Googling and research, right? So the first question is, who is your buyer? Well, if you can answer that yourself and it's an aggregator, that's half of the battle. The other half of the battle is your comfort level in navigating an exit, right? So are you comfortable talking to your financials, being in the P&L, talking about the ebbs and flows of the business, talking about your unique selling proposition, and representing your brand in the most light. So a broker is trained, right, to put and represent your business in the best light to maximize the sale. If you can do that, you have a strong shot between find the list of buyers and representing your brand in the best light to maximize the deal, selling it yourself without having to pay a broker. So I'm not anti-broker. I actually think brokers are very appropriate for certain businesses. FBA, if your entire business is USA FBA, it's a pretty cut and dry business model, right? But as opposed to something else, another industry not on Amazon, you may consider what a strategic buyer, would be. And in that case, a broker is going to be best to help you navigate how to find more strategic buyers to maximize your deal. So I think at a high level, if you're working on your business as opposed to in, and you have the capacity to navigate a deal. So like for me, I had a team of 12 people that are running the day-to-day. So for me to take on the opportunity to market my business, find the aggregators, negotiate with them, weed through the offers, talk back and forth, try to get the value up was a huge ROI on my time, because I saved about $800,000 not paying a broker. And we increased our value probably by 2 to 3 million by running a competitive process. So getting multiple offers, allowing aggregators to go back and forth and bid up higher, drove the value of our business up. So if you can do that, that's very similar to working with suppliers, right? So if you guys are private label sellers and you're going to try to find a product, it's smart to go to 2 or 3 or 4 suppliers to have widget X or widget Y made. Why would you go with the first guy you talk to, right? So many sellers are familiar with that process. That's a similar skill set to selling your business. You need to be able to speak to your brand. You need to be able to target the right price point that you need to see a successful product launch. Same thing with your business. So, I think those are the basics kind of going in line there. It doesn't happen overnight, but you have to kind of think through, do I have the capacity to invest in seeing my brand go to exit, right? As opposed to hiring a broker.
Yeah. So Josh, someone's listening and they have an Amazon private label business. They're just selling on .com and they have a medium to high level business acumen. What are a couple of the deal structures that they should avoid? One or two deal structures to avoid any downside going directly to like an aggregator?
Yeah, this is a big thing that I talk about in my book too, and things I've done to help other clients. So, as I exited, I felt really passionate about the need to help other sellers, because it's not every day that you get to build a business, build a brand, and then have a chance to sell it for millions, right? So if you screw it up, you only get the one shot. You can't go, oops, I signed a deal with you, but I should have gotten more from this other guy. You sign the deal, you're going to end up moving forward. So you don't want to learn these lessons the hard way. So I think ultimately going into it, you got to be prepared to spend the time working through the process. So there was a tangent that I was about to have, but it was related to this. Go back to your question.
So yeah, deal structure. If
Deal structure.
someone wants to go directly to an aggregator, what are some deal structures to avoid minimizing downside?
Yeah. So the deal structure is important. It's like the number one on the list. Most deals are going to look very similar, right? They're going to be a cash at close multiple, right? And the multiple cash at close is typically 3 to 4 right now, sometimes 5, but you have to be very careful. So the first point here about deal structure is making sure that your SDE that you're reporting, let's say it's 500,000, that your buyer is agreeing that it's 500,000 going into it. Because we've seen a lot of folks use high multiples to appear that they're doing a high multiple, but they're not giving you full credit for your SDE, right? So for example, I have a 500K SDE business. One buyer might give me an 8X, but they're only giving me credit for 250K SDE. Well, that's the same as a 4X, right? With using my SDE. So upfront, doing a great job of just being very clear on your SDE and how you got to it. And when you get an offer, using the right math to ensure that your multiple's in line with market. So you have your baseline SDE, then you have your inventory. Make sure you're getting an inventory and your AR in addition to the multiple. Okay, so here is a key piece. What you want to avoid is having an offer that's 8 times multiple, and they're trying to include working capital, which would be the accounts receivable and Amazon account, and inventory. Basically, that 8 multiple now is 8 multiple on half your SDE, and sneakily they're including inventory. So if you have 200 grand in inventory, that's included in the purchase price as opposed to above the purchase price or the baseline SDE. So I've seen lots of deals, but you need to be able to spell out the multiple on the SDE and then whether inventory and accounts receivable is on top of that or if it's inclusive, because that inclusive number is a mystery till you close. They're looking for a working calculation, a net working capital calculation. So that's number one, is really on the cash up front. The second most important thing to avoid on the earnout side is a structure that only pays you if, right? So meaning you need to get to 500,000 next year in SDE to get $500,000 earnout payout. What if you hit 499,000? You're going to get 0 in that structure, right? So you're $1,000 in SDE short, you're going to get 0 earnout. So in my mind, the number one thing you can do on the earnout side is use the same math. Okay, how do they calculate that earnout? Well, it's 1 times your SDE is the $500,000 earnout payment. Well, what if instead of doing 1 times, you make it a percentage, right? So a percentage of the SDE, meaning if you did 499,000, you're going to get 100% of 499,000, right? Down to maybe as low as 250,000. They say, sorry, okay, the minimum has to be at least 250 as opposed to 500, which means now you're going to have downside protection. So the key here is you want to maximize your upside and minimize your downside by getting rid of fixed payouts as opposed to variable. So those are 2 big lessons. Yeah.
I really like that advice. And this next question specifically relates to earnouts. And I'm curious if you agree with this opinion. There's been a flood of aggregators coming to the market. This is my opinion. I feel like there is a surplus of finance dudes and I would say finance dude is people are good at raising capital. I think there's a deficit of Amazon operators. It's a unique business to run and knowing the ins and outs. And so my advice to someone selling would be, if it's a new fund that may not have proven themselves, on the operation side of things, maybe go for that all cash up front deal. What's your thought on that in terms of like the capabilities of the aggregators that you've talked about as it relates to running an Amazon business as opposed to just buying?
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge, right? So to your point, a lot of guys off of Wall Street have the ability to raise a fund, create a fund. A lot of these guys also have the capability to get a deal done. Well, all that's great. If your goal is to just exit, that's awesome. Then you better be clear going into it that you don't want an earn out, and everything, every dollar, every value you're going to get out of that business is going to be cash up front. That's an example where it's important to realize the difference between selling to an Amazon FBA operator, building a world-class process system, set of people, technology, right, that can manage the nuances of inventory and sending inventory to FBA and understanding the impact on the balance sheet and profitability and the trade-offs between ad spends and organic, like true operators, right? Do they have a track record? Well, if they just launched a fund and they never worked in Amazon, operating an Amazon business in their life, well, it doesn't mean they can't hire it. It doesn't mean they're completely out of the picture. But that's a lot different with someone's track record that has done 20 or 30 deals, that has built a strong backbone and a team on the background that can operate. What happens when the listing goes down, right? All the crap that happens on a day-to-day basis, especially if 40% of your deal structure is likely tied to an earnout. That means you better trust the seller, the buyer that you're going to sell to be able to manage it and grow it, right? So that was huge for us. Like one guy gave us a 5 times earnout, a 5-year earnout. And I'm like, that's amazing. Everyone else is in line at 1 or 2. I could start up a business tomorrow and say, I buy FBA businesses and I'll pay you, one-time cash and I'll pay you for 10 years, well, if I'm just starting something up, I don't even have a website. Well, a lot of these guys do. But at the end of the day, the point is, do they have the cash? Sure. But do they have the capability? And that's two of the three C's: cash, capability, and credibility. So are they real humans? Do they have a story? Do they have a background? Who's their leadership team? Have they had previous exits and previous success? Have they been in e-commerce? Right? So that brings some credibility to the table. But capability is the second biggest word. I don't care if you have the cash, but if you don't have the capability to manage dozens and dozens of brands efficiently, my earnout is as good as zero, right? So 100% agree with that. And, there's over 100 now. So how do you know who's credible and capable? Well, ask them if they've done any deals. Ask them how many deals they've done. Let's spend time talking to some of the brands that they've bought, right? They should have no problem giving you a reference. And you want to know, did the first earnout come? Did the person that you're talking to earn his earnout? Or did they have to split hairs over it? And so a lot of these questions are really good because hindsight's 2020. Well, if they've never done a deal, there is no hindsight.
Yeah, a lot of good nuggets there. I've got a friend right now that went through a deal directly with an aggregator, and the earnout is questionable right now. And so this is huge if you're thinking about an exit and you're dealing directly without a broker and you're doing that. So definitely on that note. So Josh, you wrote a book on Aggregator Navigator, the ultimate guide to maximizing the exit of your Amazon brand. Can you speak to that book and kind of why you wrote it and what nuggets are inside there?
Yeah, it's not a huge read, but for me, I'm a guy from middle nowhere in Iowa, came to Minnesota with a plan to go to school and be a video broadcast guy. Quickly realized I love sales, I love people, I love e-commerce, I love business, right? And so taking something from zero and having a $10 million exit in 5 or 6 years, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm an average Joe. And the reality is most of the preconceived notions here is that if you're going to sell, you need a broker. And, I could have done that. And I did do that with a different brand, but a different brand that wasn't all Amazon. It made sense to hire a broker because the first question was, who is the buyer? It wasn't an aggregator. So I needed a broker to find that. But ultimately, if you think about it, when it's time to sell and you built something great, if you're in a position to not need to sell, is the best position to be in. Like for us, the Amazon brand was growing. We're going to continue to build this, but people are very interested in it. We're willing to pay us a ton more than we imagined. And so I wanted to document this story about what to look for, how to navigate this. I didn't have the notes and the experience, been through this before, but I knew I loved and I was fascinated by the process. We bought a couple businesses before, but never sold. So for me, it was really about learning. So I took all the learnings I had, how to structure an earnout, how to get your financials in order, kind of soup to nuts, how to bring a list, of buyers to the table, how to run a process, all of these things inside the book. I'm trying to demystify what most people believe as a process they've never done, and it's scary. And I'm trying to bring confidence to the everyday seller that, they can keep a lot more of their money if they can run this process. And so I believe if you can start a brand, if you guys can build a brand and sell at 7-8 figures a year, even high 6 figures, you very much have the potential to sell your own business. The question is there going to be an ROI, right? And so I wanted to provide a lot of detail on the process I went through and how to make that math work for you to save on a broker fee, but also the things to look for to really maximize that exit. So it's not a huge read, 65 pages. I'm giving away a bunch of free copies in January when it comes out. So I have a webpage on the website, brandonseller.com/landing. You can book time to talk with me for free about selling your business. You can also get a free book, sign up to get a free book. And, my hope is just to help people along the way, as brands decide to sell the brand. I'm here as an advocate, as a free advisor. I get paid by aggregators to bring them good leads. And so what that means is I become a guy in the corner. If you own a brand and you don't know the value or you don't know the structure or the strategy, the book will help. But I believe you need a guy in your corner. So part of the book was to really let people know that I'm there to help. I don't charge any seller to sell a brand, to be a guy in their corner, to give them advice along the way. So not only will I introduce you to 20 aggregators, but I will help you maximize and understand what that deal looks like and how to make sure that it's the largest potential possible outcome you could have. So that's kind of a combo, 1-2 punch of the book, and kind of why I wrote it, because anyone can sell their business. The question is, are you getting maximum dollar for it, right? And if you only have one offer, it's hard to get max dollar for it. You need to have multiple. So you need to run a process. So my book teaches that.
Very cool.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Josh, what is Branded Seller and how can your team help e-commerce entrepreneurs?
Branded Seller started with an idea that made it really easy to get videos done for Amazon listings and enhanced brand content. I don't know about you guys, but a year or two ago, enhanced brand content was great. It was new. And then videos came out about a year ago. And I was just frustrated, like $700, $800, $1,000 to build an enhanced brand content listing. And I had at this point probably 100 listings, and so 100 times $1,000 is kind of a lot of money to get listings done. So we wanted to create an easier way. And my team, both with videos and content, we produce great enhanced brand content and videos. That's kind of how it started, but that started prior to me selling the business, and that was the original intent. But Branded Seller now is becoming really an outsourced solution for any brand that wants to invest in growth and or an exit. And so if you look into exit, it's a free tool we offer to help brands introduce to buyers and kind of help you navigate an exit. But we also have a full service solution. So if you're not quite ready to sell, we partner with you in a way that allows us to improve your business, get your inventory in the right position, get enough inventory at FBA, work on your listings, come up with a game plan for the next 12 to 18 months to grow your business and then exit. So it's really one and the same. We attract brands that want to grow, and many of them eventually want to exit. And so we're there to support that transition. So that's Branded Seller in a whole, but it really started as this outlet of, hey, we want to create low cost videos. So we do $99 videos to be able to use sponsor brands video campaigns in your advertising. $99 videos to get your video to show up. These are videos designed for Amazon. So 25% of our paid search advertising came from videos within like 30 days of launching all of our videos. So it's pretty powerful. If you're not doing it, it's a huge tip. I think we do a buy one, get one free on the site as well. So feel free to check it out.
Yeah, that's incredible. $99 video. So I wrote some notes as you were talking. So that's really cool. So Josh, I know we're coming up on time, and we only got probably half the questions done. So we're definitely going to have you back on the show in the future to go over some more stuff, man. Just a wealth of knowledge. So we have fire round. We send everybody through the ringer with the fire round at the end of the show. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Good to Great.
Awesome. What are your hobbies?
Pickleball, hanging out with my kids, and building businesses.
What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
Tell me where to be.
Awesome. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Grit, man.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Very nice. Josh, how can people get a hold of you?
brandonseller.com. Take a look. There's all the web forms, the contact us forms. Go to me. Otherwise, you can email me, josh@brandonseller.com. Happy to help. I just love talking to sellers, brands that are looking to grow, brands that are looking to exit. It's free advice. It's free info. I'm not a pressure sales guy. I'm just looking to help. And if there's a win-win involved, great. If not, free advice is always free.
You bet. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Firing the Man podcast, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's Firing the Man podcast. If you like this episode, head on over to firingtheman.com and check out our resource library for exclusive Firing the Man discounts on popular e-commerce subscription services. That is firingtheman.com/resource. You can also find a comprehensive library of over 50 books that Ken and I have read in the last few years that have made a meaningful impact on our business. For that, head on over to www.firingtheman.com/library. Lastly, check us out on social media at Firing the Man and on YouTube at Firing the Man for exclusive content. This is David Schilmer and Ken Wilson. We're out. Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?